for you today. I want to begin just by talking to you a little bit about me and about the Ontario Autism Coalition and what this show is all about. So I'm a mom of two amazing kids on the spectrum. I'm also a high school teacher, and I have the honor of serving as the Vice President of the Ontario Autism Coalition. On this show, really, we're focused around two goals. One is allowing individuals with autism to tell us their stories and speak for themselves. And we do that by regularly featuring guests that are on the spectrum. The second thing we do is we talk about advocacy. So that's something that's part of the everyday life of people with autism and their families and those that work with and love and support them. So we've got a really great show for you today, and I'm excited to get started. But I also just want to take a little bit of time to tell you about the work of the Ontario Autism Coalition. Now, we are an organization that essentially is a grassroots political advocacy organization for autistic people and their families and the people that work with them. Our mission is to ensure that publicly funded services for individuals with autism and their families are accessible, that they're ethical, that they're evidence-based, and that they're comprehensive. So that's our big overarching goal. What I think makes us unique on the autism landscape, both in Ontario and across Canada, is our focus exclusively on political advocacy. That's 100% of what we do. There are other groups that fundraise to contribute to scientific research. There's groups that provide parent training. All of them focus on raising awareness, as do we. But our unique feature, I think, is our focus on policy and our work to convince the provincial government to improve those programs and services that affect our day-to-day lives. So that's what we're about. We've been around for a long time. A lot of people think that we're relatively new to the scene, but we actually formed back in 2005. There was a group of us as parents who responded to a number of issues. One was ever-growing wait lists for intensive ABA therapy, the lack of a direct funding model, and what was then an age 6 cutoff for intensive ABA. A lot of people heard about the age 5 cutoff this year and don't know that 10 years ago there was exactly the same thing. So we became really active between 2005 and 2009. We held over 24 rallies in cities across the province to raise awareness about those key issues and to try to get the government's attention. And soon enough we did, and during that campaign, which we called No More Excuses, we began to meet face-to-face with MPPs and cabinet ministers and senior officials in the Premier's office to let them know not only that we were upset, but what our ideas were about what could be done differently. So we were successful, I think, in that first campaign. Although the government won in the courts the right to have an age cutoff, we helped, I think, with a lot of other heroic activists, both in the courts and on the streets politically and in the media, to make it politically impossible for the government to carry on with that age cutoff. So imagine our shock and our outrage when, flash forward to 2016, we read the paper and there's the government last spring announcing this historic new investment in autism, but as they tag on at the bottom, they're going to introduce an age 5 cutoff. So that's really what launched our second campaign, and the slogan or the hashtag on that was Autism Doesn't End at 5, and we did it all again, but this time with the power of social media. And so that campaign was intensive. It was 92 days from the time that the government made the initial announcement to the time that they reversed the cutoff. All of this history of the coalition, if you're interested in knowing more about it, then I'd urge you to visit our website. It's www.ontarioautismcoalition.com, and there's a page called History, and you can read a long post there about all the things that we've done. The other thing I want to talk to you about briefly today is just the structure of the OAC. Our main organizational platform is Facebook. So we have a Facebook group. The main page is just called the Ontario Autism Coalition, but we've also got a number of sub-pages. So for those that are interested in education, there's a private sub-page for that. For those interested in adult services, for those receiving direct funding or direct service. And then the page that I'm probably the proudest of is our page for our wonderful youth advisory committee, and I'll talk more about them later. The OAC is led by an executive of 5 people, a president, a vice president, that's me, our secretary treasurer, our executive director, and our clinical director. And then we also have a board of directors that meets monthly. Actually, we're meeting tomorrow. The other thing that's significant and unique about us as an organization is that before the OAC takes any public policy position, we actually have it written into our bylaws that we have to take that before our Youth Advisory Committee to actually consult with people with autism to make sure that what we do in their name actually represents their wishes and their reality. We've also got a written set of bylaws. If you want to read those, you can. They're on our website. And we've also just completed our first ever strategic plan. We've got a membership database ready to launch soon. So there's lots going on. We're growing exponentially. And on the one hand, we're really proud of how far we've come. But on the other hand, I think we're still pretty humble about how much work there is still to be done. And at the end of the day, we are still very grassroots. So that's your quick OAC tutorial for the day. After the break, we're going to come back with today's special guest, Tracie Lindblad. She's the clinical director of Monarch House, and I can't wait to talk to her. Stay tuned.
Life has a way of throwing you curveballs. Sometimes you're lucky enough to see it coming. Other times it just hauls off and hits you in the face without warning. When my second child was born and turned out to be special needs, that was a curveball that neither my first wife nor I saw coming. However, it's not the fact that life saw fit to hit us with this challenge that matters. It's the daily struggle to adapt and overcome that makes us who we are. Being both a blended family and one with a special needs child definitely makes some days a real challenge to navigate successfully. It takes a full measure of teamwork from everyone involved to make the family work. Most days, we don't have it all together, but together, we have it all.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Autism in Action, and it's time for me to introduce today's special guest, Tracie Lindblad. We're honored to have you with us today. Tracie is a speech and language pathologist and also a board-certified behavior analyst with over 25 years of experience working with children and youth with autism spectrum disorders. Tracie's also the clinical director of Monarch House, a private interdisciplinary treatment center serving individuals with behavior, communication, motor, and mental health needs across the lifespan. She's a professional who works on a daily basis with people on the autism spectrum, but she's also a researcher, a frequent presenter at training workshops, and an advocate for the people that she works with. So welcome to the show, Tracie. It's nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I just want to get started right away with some questions. Let's start with Autism 101. For our viewers, what is applied behavioral analysis and why is it considered the most effective treatment for individuals with autism?
Great. Well, the short answer, because it could be here a while if you wanted to get really into it, but the short answer is applied behavior analysis is a field of study. It's a scientific field that looks at behavior change. So it looks at making socially significant changes to behavior based on a variety of principles that we use in the field. So things like prompting, reinforcement, breaking things down into little small steps. So it's a scientific field of study. And I think maybe the most important part of the definition of ABA is what it isn't for a lot of people.
Right.
And I think there's misconceptions a lot about
I
what
was
it
just
isn't.
going to ask, do you try to change every behavior of a person with autism? Surely not.
No, that's
Okay.
correct. We surely don't.
Okay.
So it really is about socially significant changes. So we're not looking at changing people's personalities, and if you have a skill set that is doing well for you, then we're not looking at changing that. We're really looking at, as we would any individual, changing something that's interfering with their quality of life, or a barrier for them, either a barrier to get a job, a barrier to have a quality life and fulfillment in their life. So for children with autism, that often means, for young ones, that we're looking at things that would impact their future.
Right.
So communication, activities of daily living, eating, toileting, sleeping, those types of things.
Okay. All right. Now, I mentioned earlier that you're a board certified behavior analyst, but that's a big acronym, BCBA. Can you tell our viewers what that means in a practical sense?
Sure. So board certified behavior analyst is a person who has gone through formal education. So at the BCBA level, that would be a master's in applied behavior analysis,
Okay.
or psychology, or education, but with a specific course sequence or specific curriculum.
Okay.
You also need to have 1,500 supervised hours before you can sit the board exam.
Wow.
And then the exam is an intensive 4-hour exam that you have to pass, so that there's a somewhat of an assurance that at least you have the academic knowledge
Okay.
of the field.
Now, is this offered at universities, or how do you acquire that certification?
Yeah, it's a university field of study.
Right.
So colleges in the U.S., as they call them, or universities here. It's often offered online, so
Okay.
you can actually be working in the field while gaining your academic courses and your supervision. There's also a level assistant behavior analyst, so you have an undergrad degree,
Okay.
and then the coursework and supervision. The frontline worker credential is called a registered behavior technician.
Okay.
And so that requires an high school education plus a course, supervision,
Wow.
training. And there's also a PhD level as well.
Okay, so there's
it's
an introductory, there's the BCBA level, and there's even more
Right.
above that. Okay, wow. In your time in the field, how much has ABA changed since you started working in the field? I mean, I know the science itself doesn't change, but what about the approaches and the development?
That's a great question. Thank you. The science itself hasn't changed.
Okay.
Well, although it is a field, and as a scientific field of study, we have to change based on new data, new research studies. You're constantly evolving the field of practice. But I think what has changed, there are a number of things that have changed. I guess it's the understanding of ABA across wider populations, for one.
Right,
Awareness, applying applied behavior analysis to a population such as autism spectrum disorder, the awareness of the public about ABA, but not only that, I think within Canada, it's understanding what ABA is and its application.
Right.
It's been around for a long time in a lot of fields, in other countries, and
Can I pause you there? You talk about other fields. I think a lot of our viewers may not know that ABA is used for other populations beside autism. Can you just touch briefly on that and tell us where else it's used?
Oh, sure. ABA is actually applied in a lot of different organizations, a lot of different populations, like you said. So developmental disabilities is one area that ABA is applied in, so not specific to autism only,
Okay.
but Down syndrome, individuals with global developmental delay, learning disabilities, ADHD. It's also got applications in mental health, so addictions, is a large area of ABA, so looking at gambling addictions, eating addictions, smoking cessation, those types of things.
Okay.
Also, there's a whole branch of the field that is organizational behavior management. So it's looking at ABA applied to your typical worker.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
using the same principles, but getting more productivity from your workers in your organization.
Okay.
And then animal training is another common one that people may know about. But
Well, yeah. Okay, very cool. Now, most of our viewers here are people with autism, people that are parenting or working with people with autism. What advice would you have for a parent that's looking for evidence-based interventions and for their kid? And what's so wrong about trying something that your friend at work suggests, or you read an article about it on Facebook?
It's a really difficult journey for parents, and it's one that's very difficult to navigate and to decide, with your time, your money, your energy, those resources, what are you going to do for your child? And I think one of the big things about using evidence-based practice is that it has been tested, and there are some assurances that you're going down the right path, and there will be some outcomes from that, some positive outcomes. It doesn't mean that there are other things that people aren't trying that may not one day have good evidence. But again, I think it comes down to if you have only limited time, if you have only limited money resources, and you have very limited energy as a parent parenting an individual with ASD, what should you try first?
Okay. On that point, if I were to come to you and just say, my child has just been diagnosed, are there any go-to books and websites or sources that you direct parents that come to you to say, this is a good, reliable source of information?
Yes, absolutely. There are some great websites and resources for parents. So one of the really good websites, it is a factual website, and it really looks at the science behind autism treatment, is the Association for Science in Autism Treatment, so ASAT. And you can find them at asatonline.org. And so it's a group of individuals, and I disclose I sit on the board of directors.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. So there's a group of individuals from North America. And what we do is we look at the science. So we look at the literature, and we look at where the science is for every type of therapy, intervention, technique that you could imagine. And scientific reviews are up there, hopefully in plain layman's language, so the parent can read. But really it is meant to be, and it functions as a non-biased opinion of what is out there for parents.
All right. So if I want to know about ABA versus gluten, casein-free diets versus swimming with dolphins versus anything else, I can find all of those and get information on that site?
Yes, you can. They're all there, yeah. And there's a section for educators, there's a section for physicians, and so it really is a website where we really try and house all the latest in evidence.
All right, speaking of education, as a teacher, this is something that interests me. There's some people in the school system who argue that ABA is therapy, and as such it doesn't belong in schools. What's your take on that?
So ABA is a method to change behavior, much like teaching. So teachers teach and to change the skill level of their students, right? And ABA is no different. And I would argue that within a school system, ABA is there. If you look at the wider population, there's a lot of application for ABA. Where there are very many education programs that have been under the umbrella of ABA. So direct instruction programs, which have amazing outcomes for your typical learner, or for children with learning disabilities. If you have individuals with mental health issues or behavioral issues that are not on the autism spectrum, there are a lot of things that behavior analysts could help with in the education setting, and allow them to contact their learning and education in a better way. But for children with ASD, ABA is the only known effective treatment. And so it is more critically important because we want children to spend their days with their peers and in that type of setting, which allows them access to peers and social situations, and they're in school until they're 21. And so to be able to get their learning needs met using the principles of applied behavior analysis makes a lot of sense.
Now, where in the world would we see ABA actually integrated into the education of students with autism?
So you'll see it integrated in many of the school districts in the United States. And it is that way because of their federal laws. So they have a lot of laws specific to special education that are national laws. So the IDEA, which is Individuals with Disability Education Act. So things like that, where it mandates that you have an IEP that specifically lists what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, the number of minutes, who is going to provide that service, and it's a legally binding document.
So it's very specific and it's legally binding.
Yes.
Now, how are things different here in Ontario or in Canada generally?
In Canada, ABA is so much more newer to everybody, I think, and because we've focused on ABA in the autism with children with autism spectrum disorders, and really through the Ontario IBI, Intensive Behavior Intervention Program, which is outside of the school system.
Right.
We really are not looking at it as, it actually could be a continuum of start in preschool, and for kids who still require ABA on an ongoing basis, bring it into the school system. It is in some of our schools in Canada.
Right.
Depends on the school. It's in some special education schools, private schools. So it really is there, but not. It's one-offs. So it's your administration, your school, your principal who allows you in.
I think our viewers know.
Yeah. So it really isn't mandated, and it's not part of our Education Act or any of our laws.
All right, so I'm going to ask the question that I think our viewers are most interested in. What can they do, or what is being done to challenge these barriers that appear to be in Canadian schools that aren't experienced in other jurisdictions? How do we change it so that ABA-based practice becomes routine, becomes normalized for students with autism?
There are things that, and I know parents feel helpless often, and they're already overworked, overburdened. The fuse is it's burned very short with parents, and we see it every day. But advocacy is a wonderful thing, and often in history, it's the parents who have changed the rules and the laws. And it really becomes, in this day and age with social media, it isn't one individual anymore. It's a growing collective.
That's true.
And so it's a louder voice. And so I think what parents have to do is educate themselves about what ABA is, what is missing in their school for their child.
Right.
Really specifically what is missing, and who are the people who are trained to actually do that. And really the other thing that they need to do is join together and support each other in advocacy activities that are taking place already. In Ontario, there is a human rights case going before the courts in May. And it is about that very thing, bringing ABA into our school systems.
Okay. Let me ask you, just on a personal note, when we talk about advocacy, this is a question I ask all my guests. What does that word mean to you? Do you see yourself as an advocate? And what does advocacy mean to you in a practical sense?
Yes, I see myself as an advocate. I advocate every day in my work life. I advocate every day. I advocate every day in my personal life as well. I think advocacy means to me that is breaking down barriers. So it's really about giving quality of life, enabling those who are either marginalized or have disabilities, and there are currently barriers that are there in their way every day. What can we do to affect change in that? And what is required to affect change? Because often, with disabilities, we fought for a long time about physical barriers.
True.
Right? And it took a lot of people to come together and a court case, and then we have laws now. And I think it's harder when it's not a physical barrier, and it's harder when it's often a smaller number.
Right. And
so I think the other piece about advocacy is bringing people together and bringing systems together and thinking outside the box often about what can we do. If there's barrier X right now, is there a way around it, and who can we bring together to help with that?
Excellent point. All right. My last question for you today is, what is the most rewarding thing for you about the work that you do every day with individuals with autism and their families?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a big question. There are so many things every day. I think knowing that you've made such a difference in the family's life. Yes, in that individual child or client, because we deal with adults as well, but often in the wider family, that you've helped someone hear the word mom for the first time, and you've allowed them to go to a restaurant as a family, or you've allowed them to actually get someone in to look after their child, who now they feel safe leaving them with somebody else so they can go out.
Right.
We have very many families who have never been on a vacation or out for dinner, and and
yeah, I do.
So those things, hearing a child who has not been vocal say a word, like I don't know. There are just so many every day. That's what keeps us going.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I know you've got a really busy schedule, so it means a lot to me and to our viewers that you took the time to come and visit us today and share your experience and your expertise. We'll make sure that Tracie's contact information and the website for Monarch House is up in the video display. And once again, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. After the break, we're going to come back and wrap up, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our logo contest. So stay tuned. Don't go away. Welcome back to Autism in Action. We are joined today we're broadcasting on Roku TV, on Comcast in the United States, and we are live on Facebook. So please interact with us. Send us your comments and your questions. What did you think about the interview that I just did with Tracie Lindblad from Monarch House? What are your questions about ABA and its use in schools? Send us all of those comments and feedback. I also want to take some time to talk to you about the Disability Channel. Please take some time to visit their website, the Disability Channel, thedisabilitychannel.ca, and take some time to look at the other videos that they've got up on their YouTube channel. There's so many and so many different topics covered. Also want to draw attention to the employment initiatives of the Disability Channel. If you believe, as I do, that our society needs to be doing more to employ people with disabilities, then check out the initiatives that the TDC is leading to do exactly that. They already employ several people with disabilities here at the channel. And if you'd like to help advocate for that, if you'd like to take your concern for autism and put it in action, then come and partner with the Disability Channel and spread the word. Contact your MP, your MPP, your local politicians and say, hey, what are you doing? What's your party doing? What's your government doing to improve employment outcomes for people with disabilities? I have a small little project that I want to talk about here, and that's that I'm putting the call out to you, the viewers, to help design the logo for this show. We've got a basic logo in place, and it's pretty good. But personally, I really love art that's created by people with autism of any age. So if you are on the spectrum or you know someone who likes to draw, and it could be a child, it could be an adult, go back and take a look at the first episode where I talked a little bit about the vision for the show, and take that and what you've seen from the show and your own ideas and design a logo for Autism in Action. Now, some technical bits. It has to be a JPEG file with a resolution of 400 pixels or more. I love how I said that as though I know what that means. And if you think you can design something like that, then I want you to send it to Jay. The email address is jay@thedisabilitychannel.ca, and he'll take things from there. And hopefully, pretty soon we'll have a logo that's actually designed by somebody on the spectrum. So that's it for today's show. I hope you found it informative. Please feel free, again, to comment on Facebook or to send me questions if you have any. You can reach me at laura.kirbymcintosh@gmail.com. Check out the links under the video here for more information, and stay tuned for future episodes. Thanks so much for joining us today. And remember, keep being awesome.